Now, this Air India Dreamliner was truly a workhorse. Recent flight history of VT A and B shows the aircraft was flying Delhi, Paris, Delhi, Delhi, Tokyo, Delhi, Delhi, Melbourne, Delhi, Delhi, Paris, Delhi again, Delhi, Frankfurt, Delhi, virtually every day from June 6 to June 11. And even on June 12, Delhi, Ahmedabad, it had already done that leg, and then it crashed as it took off for London, Gatwick. What does the black box recovery mean, and how soon will we know the truth? Joining me on India First is Jitendra Bhargav, former Executive Director, Air India, and author of The Descent of Air India. Mirza Faizan is an aerospace scientist and inventor of ground reality information processing systems, somebody who was associated with the 787 Dreamliner, and squad leader Debolina Das is a commercial pilot and aviation specialist joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Bhargav, welcome. Now that the black box has been recovered, how long, in your appreciation, before the truth emerges, sir?
Look, it's been more than 24 hours since the accident took place, the horrific accident. While on one side, there are people, the DNAs of the people who perished, etc., being conducted to get on. On the other side, the people's expectations of an early investigation to begin and conclusion drawn what happened. While any number of people who are experienced in the airline industry can speculate, comment, and say this is probably what has happened. But what gives the seal of finality as to this is what exactly happened is the black box. Because anything to do with the aircraft, whether it is the speed at which it's going, at the altitude that it has, or, for example, the conversation that is taking place between the commander and the co-pilot, everything gets recorded. And when this is decoded, you get the first set of clues that this was possibly the reason why it happened. It may be probable, one can say that the captain did blurt out in the cockpit when he was trying to ensure that we can climb further, the nose is up, that he's hit something and that this is what had happened. And we'll have to wait for it rather than speculate, get onto the black box, investigate. Yes. In my opinion, since the Boeing team has to be here, the regulatory agencies is here, airline people are here, and you decode the whole thing and come out with it. And then comes the data analysis on what's happened, what your analysis. It could be anything from 3 days to 10 days to look at it, to get on with it. The only part that I can say that one thing that I did not experience, and fortunately so during my tenure of 20 days, 20 years in Air India, was that we didn't have a situation of this kind. So I may not be 100% accurate with my observation as to how much time it takes, but my experience shows that yes, it could be 3 to 10 days to come to a conclusion and said these were the factors.
Mirza Faizan, we're told data from the black box is put on a simulator and then an assessment made on what may have happened, what perhaps went wrong. Does it take 3 to 10 days, weeks, months, or could it be years in your appreciation for truth to emerge? And does truth finally emerge?
Oh yes, truth will finally come out. I mean, this is, to me, this looks like a really open and shut kind of investigation, right? Because we do not only will have access to the black box data, we have footage of the aircraft getting crashed. I mean, where do you get a footage of aircraft last final moments of the video getting crashed? That's a really good piece of evidence for the investigator as well. So what we do is when we, there are two types of data from the black box, the CDR and the CVR, cockpit voice recorder, and the FDR, which is the flight data recorder. So cockpit voice recorder, we will immediately know what was going on. It actually records not only the communication between two pilots or the pilots and the ATC, it also records if there's any buzzer, any master alarm, anything which is coming up. So investigator will know what is the exact state of cockpit at that point of time. FDR, we bring that data up. Not all data could be put on simulator to make sense, right? Yes, the aircraft orientation, the pitch, roll, and all that stuff can be put on, the engine parameter can be put on to see. But for example, at which point of time, let's say, just for the sake of explaining, there was some issue with the fuel pump. Yes. But that data is being recorded. But but that's an internal issue with the aircraft, which might not be available up there. So we do not have any way to put that data on on a simulator. So there will be data which will be put on the simulator, and at the same time there'll be an internal analysis of the data millisecond by millisecond, like what is happening with the visible parameter versus what is happening in the invisible systems, which is going on parallelly. And that's
In
how
fact,
a
it's
whole story is built.
okay. You mentioned the fuel pumps. There are some who argue that could it be that both the engines were starved of fuel? Could it be contaminated fuel? I'll come to that aspect in just a moment. But Squad Leader Devulina Das, black box data, can it be faulted, or will truth emerge, or do questions still remain even after FDR and CVR, cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder information is known?
So, as per my knowledge, if it is it's an evident problem with either the engines or the configuration of the aircraft or the fuel, which has caused the engine to starve. So anything to do with these will be definitely recorded in the FDR and the CVR. And if these are the reasons, then definitely the answer will be out in 10 to 15 days. But sometimes, everything being okay, there might be a um, mix of all the reasons which could have caused the accident. In that case, we have to start eliminating what couldn't have happened to come to what is the final reason for the accident, which generally takes a lot of time, and then speculations start building and pressures start building, and then we have a lot of players involved to give out the result. So
Yes.
now, if we are not sure that what is the exact cause, if it is a configuration, engine stall, compressor stall, or the fuel pumps being clogged, if those are the four things that's happening, then the result will be out in a very short period, within 2 weeks or maximum a month. But if it is a combination of everything where we cannot pinpoint what it is, then the real Herculean task starts.
Okay. Mirza Faizan, what kind of data do we expect in this black box, and will that conclusively point to the cause, or, as Squad Leader Devulina said, combination of causes that may have led to the crash? Just in case we talk about the fuel pumps being clogged, will that be recorded in the flight data recorder or the cockpit voice recorder in case the engines were starved of fuel?
So first of all, I agree with Squad Leader Devulina that different parameters are taken into account to develop or construct a story and a hypothesis, and then you either make it true or you prove it false, right? So that's how it is done. See, data do not tell a story. They are just digital numbers, right? So when fuel pump is clogged, it will not say the fuel pump is clogged. It will just tell that the flow is less than the normal flow. For example, if the flow is supposed to be 150 gallon per second, I'm giving a hypothetical number, and the data records, the sensor records 90 gallon per second, that is where the investigator will have a clue to use in the story or hypothesis they build, right? So data will not tell the reason. Data will just tell what was happening. It is for the investigators and different parties to now develop a hypothesis, and you falsify it or you verify it to come to a conclusive evidence what would have happened
Okay.
in the aircraft.
Mr. Bhargav, the DGCA has ordered enhanced safety inspections of all Boeing 787-8 and 9s when the aircraft is flying virtually non-stop, like we saw from the flight data information on the flight radar. Do maintenance schedules take a hit, sir?
Gaurav, it's a good decision because after yesterday's tragic accident, the public confidence in the aircraft would have suffered for sure. Now, how do you try and boost confidence of the traveling public who are going to be flying on a Dreamliner, suddenly recalling, well, 2 days, 1 day ago, this is what happened to the aircraft and the passengers on board, since people have seen it on television visually number of times on what happened. So once you say that you have a series of additional checks introduced, it does send a positive message to the traveling public. So I am very happy that DGCA has been proactive and given this direction to Air India, and perhaps it should also give it to Indigo, which has 2 Dreamliners already flying, that this is what needs to be done. Very good decision, which is very rare, and I must share with you. So the moment people see it at the airport, additional checks being conducted, in public domain, the information is put, people will feel very, very satisfied and said, look, they are taking requisite action to ensure that what happened on Thursday does not recur.
Oh, absolutely. Because Squad Leader Das, the commander of the aircraft, I mean, he had 8,200 hours of flying experience. The co-pilot, we're told, had over 1,100 hours of flying experience. Is there any merit in some aviation enthusiasts and experts and some pilots groups? There's conversation that the pilots are no longer here to defend themselves. They may ultimately be blamed for the crash.
God forbid that happens. We would not want that, especially the pilot community. But as far as my understanding goes, with so much humongous hours of flying, it is really very difficult for a captain and a co pilot to be the reason for a crash at this altitude just after a takeoff. Like I was seeing the NDTV review of Captain Steve and his third theory, and I somewhere felt that the aircraft might have a lot of checks and lot of cautions and lot of warnings coming up if there is a configuration problem, but so does the brain of a human. I mean, if a flap is taken up instead of a landing gear and the aircraft is going down, a captain with so much experience will not just try to pull up the nose, but will look into the aircraft to see what is the reason why my aircraft is going down. So it's very difficult, obviously, to pinpoint now that what will come out as the reason. But
Okay.
as we all know that the souls are not there. But if it is so unfortunate that they will be pulled out, it will be a very black mark on the aviation industry. But
No,
I
since you mentioned,
truly believe.
there are these warnings. Mirza Faizan, the Dreamliner I was reading has multiple warning systems. The engine indicating and crew alerting system that monitors hundreds of sensors, the TCAS traffic collision avoidance system, the stall warning system, the tail strike protection system. If any parameter was not being met, that red light that would flash, the alarm that would go off, clearly, is it possible, as some aviation experts argue, that the landing gear was down and the flap was up? Would the aircraft permit that to happen?
I do not agree with that analysis. Pilots with that kind of experience making a mistake, and it's not that the flaps and the landing gear systems are just levers are just next to each other, and the pilot is a newbie who just does that. I normally, and also the sound of landing gear coming up versus the flaps get rolling up, it's entirely different. And when every time I fly, I can find out with the sound, I can find out what's going in the aircraft, right? Which state the aircraft is in. Now, these pilots with immense, flying hours under their belt, I don't think that would have happened. And I totally agree with Squad Leader Debolina. And it's in any investigation, it's easiest to blame the dead man who's not there to defend himself, right? But if that is done, right? If anyone tries to do that. In fact, when I was looking at this, the video, the clips which we have, what I see is that till the last moment, both the pilots have displayed remarkable airmanship, right? They have kept the bird in control, right? And he must be, like, it was just 15 to 20 seconds, and there was a lot of things happening. I can say the only human error, if you want to put it that way, was that he has too little time to manage too many things, which he could not do it. That is the only
Mr.
thing you can
Bhargav,
say.
okay. What do you make of all this speculation of loss of lift and the causes due to loss of thrust? The conversation that it took off flaps up and landing gear down. You heard that. I mean, a lot of pilots have been talking about it and wondering why was this happening.
Yeah, Gaurav, but I've been reluctant to put it in public domain or speculate, that this could possibly be the reason for it. There are pilots who have made statements as attributing some cause or the other, but I would rather wait for the investigation to come out and say it's a question of waiting for a few days. The black box will determine and come out with a conclusive evidence as to what really happened about it. But rather than look at it and say, well, I did look at the trajectory of the aircraft flying, having reached 675 feet above, and then you find the nose coming down, and what could possibly have gone was here, and no time being available to the pilot, though pilots are trained for all virtual kind of situations that he may have while flying. But then perhaps because the time was simply just not available with him, he had no choice or he had no control on it, the aircraft, and it crash landed. You see, when we look at it and say very often that when you have the engines off, you gliding? But here the altitude was also very limited, and you had a building in front of it. So where was the time available here? So all that we talk of training pilots for all situations, well, I think in this situation, a very challenging task because the altitude was low, obstacles en route, and there was nothing that he could do. So let's wait for the black box to give us the wealth of information or data that it has in it, and then we come to a conclusion. This was probably the cause of the accident and the death of 265 people.
Yeah, both in the aircraft and on ground. Squad Leader Das, this speculation around could both engines be starved of fuel? Can fuel contamination be an issue? And is there no redundancy to deal with fuel contamination or pipes being clogged in such a scenario?
It's a very far-fetched speculation because when the engines are open for a takeoff and the aircraft is rolling on the landing roll, any kind of issue that the engine might face or the configuration might face gives out tremendous amount of warnings in the cockpit. If the fuel is not reaching the engine, if there is a drop in the pressure of the fuel, if the engine pumps are clogged, the fuel pumps are clogged, anything going wrong which might be a cause of a disaster after takeoff will have a lot of cautions and warning as soon as you open the power of the aircraft to take off. So the fuels being clogged and the pilots taking off with that is a very low possibility which I can think of. The only thing which comes to my mind is that after takeoff, if there could be a cause for a compressor stall or an engine stall, even then both the engines have to stall, and or both the engines have to be hit by a lot of birds is the only thing that can cause the aircraft to lose the power and stall and go down the ground. Otherwise, any fuel clog, anything like that will have its caution and warning as soon as we take off. And this happened
And
just
then are
30
there
seconds after
redundancies? Fuel
takeoff.
goes from multiple channels in these aircraft. Mirza Faizan, too soon to speculate on either fuel contamination or, as some argue, there could have been electrical failure. There are conspiracy theorists who are talking of suspected or possible sabotage. Is that even possible?
As far as possibility of sabotage is concerned, I don't think that this is a sabotage. But there is one other approach or angle which I think investigator will focus, or they might focus the investigation on. This is a complete fly-by-wire aircraft. Now try to understand what is fly-by-wire. The pilot gave instruction to the computer, and computer actuates whatever the system has to do. It's not mechanical movement kind of stuff. The throttle of 787 is also fly-by-wire. Now, if there is an issue in the system which is controlling the fly-by-wire, the computer system, the electrical system of the fly-by-wire system, so the instructions sent by pilot to give full throttle to the engine might not be actuated by the engine because it is not reaching. That could be one more angle, investigator could look at, right? Apart from fuel and other angles.
Okay, but in that case, is there no manual override in case the system's not listening to you? Is there a manual override?
Not for throttle. not for
Not for
throttle,
throttle.
right? For ailerons, for the control systems, there is a manual override, but not for throttle. Throttle is completely fly-by-wire.
Excuse me. Bhargav, is sabotage even possible? There are many systems, or are there systems, you've been in this industry for over 20 years with Air India. Are there people who keep an eye on each other to ensure there's no sabotage, or is that possible?
There is a very robust system at the airport, considering that this aircraft had flown from Delhi to Ahmedabad. Nothing happened, nothing untoward had happened. Now, at Ahmedabad airport, naturally, refueling would have been done, technical inspection would have been done by the engineer, and there are people always present. Now, if you look at this kind of a remote chance that, yes, probably somebody played mischief and it got overlooked, which is a feasibility, considering that Ahmedabad airport at that particular time was not having too many aircraft around, etc., that you could probably be caught doing something of this kind. But if somebody has done, he's done it mischievously and smartly, not to have been detected. But then, as I said earlier, the flyby aircraft with everything computer controlled, did the pilot get any kind of a lighting indication, etc., that something was wrong? Something was wrong. And as one of the panelists very rightly said, with the commander having 8,000 plus hours of flying, a mistake of this kind was improbable. But then, if you rule out every kind of a thing, the pilot was experienced, the aircraft has a good track record, the visibility factor was very good. The reality is the accident did take place.
It indeed
Now,
did,
what
and
was
perhaps
it?
it's that, yes, the cockpit
So
voice
that is
recorder
where
and the flight data
the
recorder.
black box become important, the information, and the faster one can get onto it and get this thing, because the data that you get, and Boeing
Yes.
will have a wealth of information, etc., juxtapose a particular situation or a kind of a previous accident, not involving this accident aircraft, but anything else, and you will probably get some conclusions very clearly and very early.
We'll track that story very closely. I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Mr. Jitendra Bhargav, Squad Leader Deb, and Faizan for joining me here on India Today. As always, many thanks.